Hey everyone. I know I'm hard to compete with ice cream, but thank you for coming back here for our last set of talks. I'm going to walk through the content moderation landscape in video. It looks like this sometimes, where you kind of get stuck and not pushing against the wall. So, moving forward, just a quick introduction on me. Yes, that is actually me. I am, COVID changed me a little bit, but I'm not the same person. But I work at Demuxed now. I was product manager, developer, engineering, developer experience, and also now we're leading out solution architecture support and working with our customers directly. But really, that's how I get into talking about this type of stuff, because I see our customers run into these walls every day. So what are we talking about here? What is content moderation? I'm going to give you a crash course. This is not going to solve any problems for you. It's just an idea to give you a way to start thinking about this as you run into these problems that are coming out there. I only have 10 minutes. So it's going to go really fast. You can always find me afterwards. I'll be around, and you can ask questions if you want to. So what is content moderation? Everyone kind of knows about this. Eventually, it's the result of the fact that if you put anything out there that's nice, someone will come find it and try to make it terrible. So you need to be able to handle people uploading content that you don't want to be seen or around there. So the types of things you might see are nudity, pornography, violence, illegal content, illegal sports piracy, and other things that might just be objectionable to any one of your audience. It might be different sets of your audience that might care about it. It might be protecting you. This is what you kind of encounter in day-to-day life with the internet, and you really have to be ready to prepare yourself to handle it as it comes in. Why should you care? For things like nudity, pornography, and violence, it's almost more about protecting your audience. You can think about it that way. You want to make sure that people have a safe space to go look at the content that's there and provide that experience. When you get to the illegal content, sports piracy, and other things that might be out there, it might be more protecting your company, whether it's protecting your image or protecting yourself from anything that might make your company less viable in the space. But it all comes down to risk management. If there's one thing to come out of this, this is it right here. When I talk to customers about content policies and content moderation, it's all about judging your business risk versus the amount of effort it takes to combat that. It's very difficult. A lot of these things are hard to solve. There are no clean solutions anywhere in this. And you really need to get that balance right about how much effort it is that you want to put in to block certain things that come out there. So we're going to use two use cases in real life that we've encountered here at Demuxed as examples to talk about where you might draw those lines and what the technical difficulties are as you get into that. User-generated content using on-demand content, and then also live streaming has its own specific things. Again, what you do with this information is up to you. This is not solutions. Do not take me as gospel for how to solve these problems. It will not solve all the problems that are out there. But we're going to start with user-generated content, and we're going to use stream.new, which is an open source project that we created in 2019, 18, something like that, to kind of build out an example of how you might build a UGC video upload service, something along the lines of Imager streamable. You can upload a video, you can record it from your camera or from the device itself, and then send it off, and then we provide back a playable URL. Open to the public, totally free. You can just use this as you want to. That brings up business risk as a question. So it's an open source project. You might not think that there is for open source. There really is a lot of business risk in open source projects, but it also opens up an opportunity for us where we're able to skirt the questions of, are we having discussions around what is violence, what is nudity, what is pornography or not? Those are really hard questions that is better suited to have your content policy team or your trust and safety team talk about. For us, we decided, we're just going to make it easy. There is no violence allowed. There is no nudity allowed. And we're just going to draw the line there and build a solution to solve that. So there's your question of what do we want to target before we start looking at the tools. So how we tackled it. I'm going to go quickly here. Dylan, one of my colleagues, wrote a blog post about this called You Either Die in MVP or Live Long Enough to Build Content Moderation. And it goes into this in depth, and you should look at that afterwards because I will go very quickly here. But a few thoughts about how we went through this is we first looked at it and we said, okay, Hive and Google Vision, they support videos. Let's just toss the video over to them and see what they say. It's really expensive. So that was kind of off the ground for an open source project. We cannot support doing that all the time for all the videos. So then we have this feature at Demuxed where you can get a storyboard used for like that scrubbing along the players as the playhead time. It gives a user, like a person, a really good picture of what's in this video all in a single place. That's awesome. You toss that into Hive and it just doesn't really work that well. It confuses the model because there's too many individual images around that it doesn't know what to do with. So we scratched that and we decided to go with 5 sampled images across and send those off to Hive. We use their recognition detection to understand different scoring that they have there, NSFW, violence, other categories they have. We send those off, get back those scores, look that up, and based on that, we decide to just delete videos automatically if they're there. That works pretty well. Again, I want to stress here that it works well enough for what we were trying to do. If you're trying to do something around pornography or allow certain different levels of this content is really going to be difficult to get this right, and you have to think about what you want and how you're going to do this before you really start digging into the problem or the technical to solve it. So that worked pretty well, and if you think about content moderation on the VOD side, you have the whole video, and so now we're going to talk about live streaming, and specifically we're going to talk about soccer piracy, which is a big problem in the internet today. I'm sure everyone here has probably seen it, watched a stream that they probably shouldn't have, or fights it on their day-to-day lives. So from a business risk point of view, with Stream.new, we were on violence and nudity, and those are problems for live streaming and anything like that, but in this case, we really wanted to combat piracy, specifically soccer and football. The reason for that as a business is takedown requests, DMCA. I'm not going to go into the depths of DMCA. There's too much there to really talk about because it's a really big process. You have to follow certain rules and regulations and registration. But suffice it to say that it adds a big burden to you logistically. You have a lot of people and a lot of time spent handling this process. You really don't want to get into that. So if you can avoid having those come in the first place, that's where you best spend spending your time. Loss of money. These people that are streaming content, they're streaming these soccer matches, aren't going to pay you money. They might sign up with a credit card and they might start using it happily. They deliver to hundreds of thousands of viewers and they end up not actually paying at the end. So you're left footing the bill. So you want to stop that before it happens if you can and limit those risks of costs. These next two are more about the trust aspect. I realize I'm going very fast. Again, I apologize. I have 10 minutes and so I have to go very quickly through this. But this is more about lack of trust. So if you lose trust from your customers, they're not going to come back to your service and watch more videos. If you lose trust of your partners, they might not want to work with you. They might not want to buy from you. They might not want to recommend you. And that's a really big business risk that you need to make sure you're aware of. That can be in the extreme kind of something as bad as this, where if CDNs see you constantly being the source of them getting DMCA takedown requests, they might decide, we're not going to even bother about this. We're just going to cut them off and not let them deliver content. And that can be a big risk to your business as it goes. So you want to make sure to try to tackle this before any of these happen, so you're not wasting your time after the fact. So I'm going to go through some problems, and we'll talk about how you might think about solving them. For live streaming, we'll start there. It's not an on-demand asset. You have to somehow get still images. You could pass clips of live streams to Hive, but again, that starts getting expensive, so you might have to balance that out. Instead, you can get images, but when you get those images, the content can change across them. You can start with a slate, and then you get into the content, or you enter in an ad, or you see this. And in the live stream, it actually changes a little bit more often than any VOD asset that's out there typically. And then the question of how many images do you need and where do you pull them from is another question. You need the beginning of it, end of it. You don't have the end of it yet because it's still live, and you want to try to get this early. So there's intricacies there that you need to figure out. We found that the first 10 minutes tends to be a pretty good guide of what content will be there, and you'll start to get images there, and we grab a few images across the way to do that. Okay, but once you have the images, what do you do with them? And so here we actually found Google Vision to work better than Hive in this case, whereas Hive worked better in the Stream.new case than Google Vision, because what we wanted to do was tag each image with sports-related objects, balls, fields, field houses, goals, soccer jerseys, anything like that. And so we set this up and started playing around with it, and lo and behold, it works pretty well. You can see soccer, but you also get basketball and hockey and bowling and darts and people selling t-shirts. All of these things are really hard to get right because you have to go through and end up targeting the set of content that you want, and that's really hard on an image by image and object by object basis. Gives you a good start. You can really go in and say, okay, I can start detecting what I want where, but doesn't really work, and I definitely don't have solutions for you, but even when you do detect the content, the last thing I'll say it is a sports match. That sport might be legitimate for this one customer of yours. You really have to know the context of where that's streaming as well. And it's just a pain, so it's really hard to get everything in the right place at a time. So what are we gonna do next? And others might have gotten this before me, but in the past, I don't know, a few months, people at Demuxed have been hearing me talk about this for a while, but I had this idea that images don't really work well. They do for a good signal, but they're not the whole thing, and maybe the audio actually has a better signal for what you want and is more scalable in serving that. So we're gonna go into how to do that briefly. So first, you clip 10 minutes out of the live stream, however you manage to do that. What part do you clip? That's not something I'm gonna tell you about now. But if you can then get to that you have a clip of an on-demand asset, you then install Whisper, very easy. Here's our code portion of the talk. You strip out the audio, FFmpeg, because it's demuxed, and then you generate a WebVTT transcript, which is what Whisper does really well. I was very lazy. I knew the language. I just told it what it was, didn't go into the auto detection, but you can solve that problem if you want to. The output of this goes into our friend ChatGPT, and you can see the prompt that I have here, just setting up the state. I have a WebVTT file of a sporting event. It's in this language. What is it? And it says it'll try, and it did a really good job. This is the first thing that I did as I was playing around with it, and it was a French hockey game, and it came back explicitly saying it was hockey and told me exactly why, what words it found, what the audio transcript said that was there. And this is 10 minutes of a 2-hour clip. And I have a very clear hockey as opposed to, oh, it's a sporting event that you might care about. Recreating this in Google Vision tags would be very difficult to tie them all individual piece by piece together. And instead, this lets you get that automatically. Another example of it is a same thing, but this is soccer in Spanish. And it said the same thing. It first said, it's translated it for me. I don't know why, I didn't ask it to, but then I asked why to get the same thing, and it had the same idea as before. You can see the words in Spanish that it's used as that commentary went along. So this is really promising, and it's something that can be used. It's a little harder to scale. You gotta have Whisper running. You've gotta be able to do this at scale. But it's something that we're looking into as an option and might be a tool that people here can use if they wanna start digging into this as well. I will leave you with one more option when you wanna try to combat piracy. If you have someone who's abusing your service in a way that you don't want them to, you can just ask them nicely too, and it sometimes works. We reached out, emailed these people that were uploading content we didn't want. They responded within an hour, said okay, and never uploaded again. So that's it.